Welcome to the Dynasty Evaluation. We got a special guest today, Seth WoolCock. We are talking about tight end Tyler Warren, 6'6", 256 pounds from Penn State. We love tight ends here, especially me. JT knows that I am a tight end fanatic, so these are the shows I look forward to. Tight end shows are what gets me going, baby. So let's get this show started. What is going on there, Mr. Seth? I haven't seen in a while since the Expo. I think a year ago or 2 years ago. I think it was. I think you were getting started with the draft night out kind of stuff like that, right?
Yes, yeah. John, great to be with you. JT, nice to link up with you as well, brother. And hey, life is good, man. We are approximately less than 2 months away from the NFL draft, so I'm in all my glory right now, just basking in it, brother.
Yes, sir. So now that you're here, you got to tell everybody, where can everybody find you at? Because you've been moving up the company ladder here last couple months, last year or so. So what's going on?
Yeah, so you can find all my work over at inbetweenmedia.com. That's my company over there. We're at IBT_media here on YouTube. We talk fantasy sports and sports betting from a refreshing and feel-good standpoint, whether you're into NFL, fantasy football, college fantasy football and betting, NASCAR, DFS and betting, PGA, entertainment betting. We've got it all over there. And then I'm also with the Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros crew. We're at Fantasy Pros, at Betting Pros on YouTube, and also fantasypros.com, bettingpros.com. I have a lot of fun with both those companies, man. It's just a blessing to be able to talk sports and talk betting and fantasy sports with some of my best friends every single day.
I only know one other guy, Kyle August, who actually does any kind of NASCAR. How do you do NASCAR? How do you do NASCAR fantasy?
Yeah, so there's different types of leagues. You can play in like some, traditional redraft leagues where you're drafting drivers for a period of time, whether that's a couple months, a couple races, the entire season. Or there's also a lot of them that you're drafting weekly. You redraft, you're kind of in a salary cap format. And then also you can just bet on different markets as well. Who's going to win the race? You can bet on head-to-heads, driver versus driver. You can bet top 10s, top 5s. So it's a growing market. It's definitely a niche market, but it's definitely a fun one every single Sunday and Saturday to watch some cars go around the track and win some money off it.
I wait till whenever there's an accident, I run it to TV, and in the last 2 or 3 rounds, I go over and drink some beers and watch who finishes. And that's kind of I'm getting the team aspect of it, how people block for each other and all that kind of stuff. But it takes a special kind of person to watch 500 laps of a race, or watch 500 miles of a race. So good for you. I'm glad you got that niche, because I'll get there one day, I guess, but I'm not there yet. But I'm glad you're doing it. Somebody's got to be doing this stuff, and it might as well be you, right?
Yeah, dude, there's degenerates for everything out there, man. I'm sure there's some people who watch as much cricket or badminton or table tennis as I do NASCAR. So yeah, there's someone for everything out there. And hey, maybe you and I one day we can be the first people to maybe start like a fantasy beer league, something like that. I think that's definitely in the cards for some guys like you and I who definitely enjoy a couple adult bevies here and there.
You might be in the wrong weight class for that one, homie. That's all. But all right. But we'll speaking of that, today's Ash Wednesday was Wednesday. Today's Friday. We're going to St. Christina's Church in Mount Greenwood in Chicago. It's cheap beers and walleye and cod and all kind of stuff. It's just what a whole church, a whole basement full of Catholics go there drinking and smoking and having a great time. And it's what Lent's what it's all about. So I can't wait till when this one's over. I'm heading to the city and we are drinking some beers, man. So
I love the Midwest, baby. I love the Midwest. That doesn't sound anything more like March in the Midwest than going to a fish fry in a church basement, John. I love that, man.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. JT, what's going on with you, man? We were just here about an hour ago. We were here last night for about 5 hours, drinking about 17 beers. What's going on with you since an hour
I feel like we didn't get to do a show for a while now. Me and you've been piling them up here in the last week or so. So yeah, man, good times. Always, like I said, love the draft. Love this time of year. Love talking to all the college guys that people haven't seen. I watch a ton of college football, but not everybody does. So getting to, kind of put the word out about these guys that people maybe haven't heard of yet, or just kind of diving into the rookies, always a fun part of the year for me.
This is absolutely fantastic. Jamie Perog gets up guys twice in a day. It doesn't happen too often. I'm getting old. I know I only do it once a day sometimes, once every other day, but
John, and then I got Jamie join us tonight. We got 2 Shoot the Gap IDP shows tonight, as me and Jorge have had a couple shows get backed up. So I'm just working all day, and then I got 2 DLF articles coming out too. So it's a football Friday here.
No fish fries for you tonight, JT.
Nope, I'm working.
Nice.
All work and no play doesn't get you messed up, buddy. You got to drink some beers.
So I had all kinds of fun last weekend at the combine and in Columbus at the Red Wings game. So I probably need a mini break anyway.
Well, the best part of Lent is every Friday you get to have fun again. It's absolutely fantastic. So, all right. So what we're doing today, we're talking about Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State. If anybody, you guys are into any kind of Dynasty Fantasy Football, you know exactly who this guy is. He's going to be the number 1 tight end in this year's draft class. Stud. If you watch him play against Notre Dame, it was you saw get a glimpse of what he is. If you're from the Midwest, you watch a lot of Penn State and Wisconsin, Michigan State, all these teams. So we got a big chunk of Tyler Warren throughout the season. So it was super fun to watch him. So what we're going to do here for the show, for anybody who is the first time watcher, first time listener kind of thing, we're going to have a couple questions here. We're going to talk about the good on paper, the good on film, analytics, test scores. We have combine information to talk about now, all that kind of stuff. And then after that, we're going to talk about all the bad on paper, bad on film, bad analytics, test scores, blah, 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 all that stuff. Some intangibles, anything off the field. Some of these guys don't have any off the field issues at all, which is a lot of positive stuff coming out of these spotlights, which is awesome to see. Guys, leader of the neighborhood group, all kind of good stuff. Great grades, great people, great everything. So that's always nice. Then we're going to talk about the draft range, where he's projected to go. What team he's going to go to, and then kind of the fantasy range, where he's going to go in some people's fantasy football drafts, depending on where he gets drafted at. So let's start right there, Seth. What the good on paper? Tell me about stuff you learned about Tyler Warren through your research in fantasy football.
Yeah, so I will preface everything I'm about to say on this program that I am a Penn State fan, so I've had an up close and personal look at Tyler Warren for the past few seasons here, specifically in 2024, when it was perhaps the greatest college football regular season all time for a tight end. Finishes the entire year, including the postseason, second in the entire country in receptions with 104, 7th in receiving yards as well, over 1,200 of them. And the thing that I think gets lost a little bit with Tyler Warren is, like, not only is this guy phenomenal at, catching the ball in traffic, hands are always sticky. He thrives at staying inside the chalk in the back of the end zone as well. But at the same time, this is a former quarterback, right? Like, this is a guy who lethal as a ball carrier, 218 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, used all around the offense for Andy Kotelnicki in his first year calling plays in Penn State. He would play out wide, in the slot, in line. He'd be in the fullback position, put him in the tailback position, under center, wildcat. 30.2% dominator rating as well. So, he's someone who was important to this Penn State Nittany Lion offense up there in the Big Ten. And for me, John, the comp is George Kittle mixed with Taysom Hill. He's 6'5", 256 pounds, great after the catch and down the seam, just like George Kittle's done for years. And at the same time, this is a guy who has a very, very high football IQ, always knows what's going on in each play, just like Taysom Hill. We saw him a lot used in those college football playoff games where even if he wasn't touching the ball on a play, he would come and he would start the play in the backfield, like under center, and then he would motion out. So always a guy who's going to be around the ball. And there's not much to say other than that. This is a guy who could give you premier production at the next level if used creatively.
That's funny you said that George Kittle, because it's a player that does everything. That's all over the field that you can see. He's blocking downfield. He's in the backfield. He knows the game of football. He has fun playing football. You see him on the field, but at the same time, his motor never stops. He's blocking till the end of the play. If he doesn't have the ball in his hand, he's making sure his teammates have a path whenever possible. It takes a lot for a guy to be good at football, be good at tight end, where you have to learn offensive lineman schemes and wide receiver route tree. And on top of that, be a good blocker and understand where the player is going to be on the football field. So you know how to get, what I call it is get your butt to the ball. If the ball is getting around, you just, wall your man to the inside, vice versa. If it's a counter, get your guy outside. That he knows where to be on a football field. So it's refreshing watching a guy like that just play the game of football the way it's supposed to be played. JT, what do you know about Tyler Warren?
Yeah, I'm right there with Seth. I'm guy that can do a little bit of everything. I like those comps. I think those are good comps. Just to compare him to another Penn State tight end, Pat Fryermuth, for the Steelers. I think he's a little bit bigger, a little more athletic. Fryermuth, who I am a lot higher on than most people. I like Muth a ton. So I think Warren is a guy that deserves the praise. I know it's a little bit different when we're always talking about tight ends, right? It's like everybody wants to talk about that early denominator or when a guy hit, kind of those things, but you just don't see that with tight ends. It's not the same as with running backs and wide receivers. It takes these guys a little bit longer to get involved. But what you saw with Tyler Warren, he's in a great system. Penn State has put out phenomenal tight ends for years now. And so, I see some people like, oh, he didn't hit till a little bit later, but it's like he was playing behind some really good guys that are now in the NFL. And
two day two guys, right?
Yeah.
With Brenton Strange and Theo Johnson.
So it's not like he was playing behind some bums, and he's a guy that changed positions. So again, of course, he's a guy as a former quarterback moving to the tight end. Seth said the production. I mean, one of the all-time great seasons. Him and Harold Fannin being both in this draft with two of the greatest seasons from college football tight ends ever. John, we talked a little bit about it in the mock draft show, but I said, Mason Taylor has had a great career at LSU, and he's getting overshadowed because these guys were so unbelievably awesome that a nice 40 or 50 catch, 500-yard, 5 or 6 touchdown season is phenomenal. Typically when you're looking at tight end production in college,
not
but when you get guys 100 catches for over 1,000 yards, I mean, it's unreal. And the fact that he was the number one guy on their team. I mean, they did not have good wide receiver production at all at Penn State. He was the offense along with the running backs. Just the fact that they could lean on him as heavily as they did with his teams, because to me, he screams a guy that should be successful at the NFL level and early. We always talk about, a lot of times it takes a couple guys a couple years at tight end to really, find their groove in the NFL. But we've gotten lucky the last couple years with some early rookie tight ends that have hit. He's a guy that feels like he's ready to hit right away. I don't think he's going to need that learning curve as some other guys do. I think he comes in and is immediately productive. So I like what Warren done. As a Colts fan, every Colts fan I know is like, we got to get him at 14. I was screaming for Brock Bowers last year, and they were unable to get up high enough to get him. So Tyler Warren would be a nice option if they were able to get him. But as we get closer to this draft, we'll talk about it here in a minute. I don't know if he gets to them. So it's going to be interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, there's the old mantra of kind of the tight ends are going to take 2-3 years to hit. Kind of it was slowly kind of like, wow, these guys are hitting a little bit early. Now it's just they're just shuffling in and just making a huge impact right from day one. And like you had said about Harold Fannin, watching Harold Fannin, I know in my C2C teams just pretty much win me weeks by himself sometimes. Absolutely fantastic. So there's a lot of good tight ends in this league, but I'm really not sure that like Tyler Warren, I think, is one of the players that just knows the game of football better than like Harold Fannin's just a receiver. You don't really see Harold Fannin going downfield making blocks for anybody, let alone blocking on like run plays, especially. Like he's not even blocking on run plays most of the time, let alone like even on like you see George Kittle and Tyler Warren. If it's a screen pass, those guys are downfield making plays, like blocking linebackers, quarterbacks, and safeties, so that the play can shuffle downfield. I don't see that from a lot of these other tight ends besides Tyler Warren. It's I guess like JT said, the quarterback background that lets him. I think he sees the field so much better than some people because of the fact that he knows where people are supposed to be on the field with the ball in their hand. So that it's absolutely refreshing. Now, as far as good things are concerned, I mean, we can go on for days about all the good stuff we see on a football field, but people want to hear like what's going on. What is the like? I don't want to say bad, but what's like the what's not. The biggest thing that we were talking about here with Tyler Warren is that they call him a one-year wonder because he had 5 receptions, 10 receptions, 34 receptions, and then all of a sudden 2024, 104 receptions, 1,233 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So 11.9 yards per reception. I mean, do you consider him how are you a one-year wonder when if people always say, okay, it's a talented tight end room, blah, blah, blah. But if you're that talented, you should be able to beat people out. Why couldn't he beat out the other players around the team that were good tight ends, but not great tight ends? They weren't like these guys. None of those guys hit the NFL running and just like destroyed the NFL. Why couldn't Tyler Warren beat out some of these guys?
I think part of it, man, is like when you look previously, before the 2024 season, we did not have great development on the offensive side of the ball at Penn State. We always had good running backs, but going back to Saquon, we bring in Singleton, we bring in Katron Allen. That's been handy dandy. But when you really look at things from a deeper perspective, like before Andy Kotelnicki got there, like nobody was talking about Theo Johnson until he goes out there at the combine last year and drops a nearly perfect relative athletic score. And everyone was kind of like, where's this guy been at Penn State the whole time? Because Theo, was helpful to us at times. I remember he helped us win the Purdue game a couple years ago. But at the same time, there have been moments where these guys kind of just fade in and out of the offense. They finally get a guy in the room like Andy Kotelnicki coming from Kansas, and you see what a big impact that made down there in Kansas as well, because they had a very rough start to the year, but after being projected top 25 team. So I think some of that's a lot of that is coaching, and Penn State is also just one of those classy organizations, man, where they're going to give the older, more superior player the benefit of the doubt 100% of the times. It's always just how they've operated. That they're the same team that doesn't put the name on the back of the jersey. There's just certain things that this program does, and I think that's really why we're looking at that with Tyler Warren. And JT, like I don't want to say like Theo Johnson and Brenton Strange are world beaters by any means, but they're going to be starting tight ends in the NFL in 2025.
Yeah, and those guys are guys that are a little more on that typical tight end curve that we see, guys that didn't get a ton of production in college, not necessarily because they weren't good, but because of the offense they were in. And then guys that get in the NFL and they're kind of, I think both those guys are primed for breakout years, and was going to be year 2 and 3 for those guys. So I think both those guys are set up to have some pretty nice seasons. I think they're going to be both really good values in fantasy drafts. I like both those guys. Like I said, I think Warren's ahead of them right now, just because of the way they were able to run the offense for him.
Yeah,
but both those guys are good. I mean, both those guys are good, high picks, and so I think those guys are more the traditional route where we're seeing Warren. Again, there's not a lot you can compare him to because tight ends haven't had these kind of years before Brock Bowers. I mean, Brock Bowers kind of broke the mold on it, and then everybody else was like, oh, I guess we could use our guys like they use Brock Bowers. And I think Penn State, to the credit for them for how much their offensive coaching staff has gotten ripped the last couple of years for not being very good.
Yeah.
The fact that they were able to turn around and really go, man, look how Georgia used Brock Bowers. Maybe we should use Tyler Warren like that. And they actually used him in the run game like Georgia did with Bowers, and did different ways to move him around as opposed to setting him up on the line, having him run the same 3 or 4 routes. They did things to get him the ball and move him around. And to me, that's just a credit to him. Not only that he had a great year, but a team that already is not considered great offensively figured out a way to have him have a great season. I think also speaks more for what Warren did on a team that legitimately, when's the last time they had a breakout offensive guy that wasn't a running back?
Yeah.
I mean, Johan Dotson was maybe the best guy. I mean, he didn't even have
Chris Godwin, maybe, if you want to go way back.
And they didn't even have necessarily Tyler Warren type seasons for Penn State. So it does speak to his ability that he was able to kind of put this type of year together. It's pretty incredible when you really want to break it down next to historically what tight ends have done in college football.
Yeah, you're going to get a look at like Brenton Strange might have his opportunity to shine right now with cutting Evan Ingram, And
I had so much exposure to Brenton Strange, John, and I don't know what I did last offseason. I just when Ingram got re-upped, I was just like, okay, well, I think there goes my Brenton Strange hopes, and I flushed him down the toilet, and now I have insane remorse for cutting him in a couple places on some taxi squads.
Yeah, I had to make room, and you make the playoffs, got to make some tough choices, and even in some of the little bit deeper leagues, I've made some mistakes of getting Brenton Strange. I put out a tweet yesterday afternoon, just saying, hey, Michael Mayer, to the Jaguars, and got like 30,000 views already. It's like something stupid like that. And it's like, wait a minute. But people are like, why would you do that? You got Brenton Strange already. He was a 2nd-round draft pick. He's almost, if you look at his intangibles, he's pretty much the same size, same weight, same everything. I mean, it's almost a carbon copy of Michael Mayer. So it's like, why would you do that for? But then I saw also the difference in production is Michael Mayer had he had as many stats as Brenton Strange did all 4 years in 1 year at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as receivers concerned, I like, and I'm a Notre Dame fan. I'm a huge season ticket holder of Notre Dame for like almost my entire life. Like you at all times. So
don't do that to me, John.
I know, you guys,
brother. We had, oh man,
it was looking so good for a minute. I was like, now we're gonna war.
We had, we had that game. I have never in my adult life never had a game affect me. I could barely get out of bed the next day. I mean, my knees were shaking in the moment. I mean, just I think I still got PTSD from that, brother. Honestly.
Well, I had about 17 straight shots of Jameson at the end of that game, so we're on different sides of the spectrum. My knees hurt a little bit the next morning too for different reasons.
Oh, that's funny. Hey, John, we got a question from Jamie here. It says, "Are you sure Strange is going to be the starter? What do we think about them maybe drafting Warren, Fannin, or Loveland?" What do you guys think about that? I definitely think they could go tight end in the draft. I do like Strange. I do think they like him. Obviously, took him in the second round. But it'd be interesting with how deep this tight end class, especially with letting Ingram go, if they don't go tight end somewhere in the draft, if they don't pick someone up somewhere else. What do you guys think?
I just feel like they got like a little bit more pressing needs, probably. Like, especially like they're at pick 5. Like, you can pretty much, like, to me, it's like right in Mason Graham's name to that 5th overall pick, in my opinion. And then Warren and Loveland are not getting back to them in the second round. They'll be gone in the first. So, like, at this point, yeah, you could maybe take a shot on Fan, and you could maybe take a shot on like a guy like Arroyo down there from Miami as well. Like, that would kind of be the range. But I still feel like, I mean, now they don't have any wide receivers outside of Brian Tallman either, right? Like they're kind of pretty thin at that position. It feels like their linebacking core could also use some help still, and that cornerback room. So I just feel like, if anything, maybe they can get a guy on day 3. But John, it just feels like they don't maybe have the capital to allot to that position here.
They know what they have in Brenton Strange. They wouldn't have cut Evan Ingram. They would have tried to work something out if they didn't say like, hey man, this guy could do what we want him to do. He could be part of the team. And on top of that, when you have a guy that you trust like Brenton Strange, you paid, he was a second round pick. I mean,
yeah,
you could build the rest of your team around that. You don't have to go for a backup tight end because you could fill the spots. Obviously they're going to need the 17 receivers to replace the entire receiving core. And now they need a lot of defensive line help. They need everything help, pretty much. So if that's the case, then they're going to, hey, we got to cut costs. We got to get rid of Ingram. I think Brenton Strange could just fill that. It's a copy and paste, just the same position. He could do the same things Ingram can do. We're okay with that. Moving on. So I would like to see a guy like Mayer just because I want to see Notre Dame love going on all over the NFL as much as I possibly can. But I understand that Brenton Strange is their future. It is what it is. So they're going to get a free agent or a UDFA tight end probably or some practice squad guy to fill in the backup role behind Brenton Strange. But I don't see why they would pick up one of these other tight ends when they already have that in so many other places to fill. So that's my only Jamie. That's my response to that one. But besides any other thing negative about Tyler Warren that you guys can think of, like anything that you see in his game? I mean, it's really kind of hard to poke through somebody when they have 104 receptions and 1,200 yards as a tight end in the NFL in college, which, I mean, for the longest time, college tight ends just didn't do anything in college, and now they're starting to be like pretty much like a receiver position. So, anything else besides the 1 year of production? Anything else that like you guys can like kind of like nitpick? I guess just anything to say anything about like JT, Seth.
I would say like definitely improvement. Room for improvement as a blocker, specifically when playing in line. I think he's fine as a run blocker, but sometimes he can get a little sloppy there. He can also get somewhat sloppy like with his route running later in games. I think maybe that was just like a conditioning thing. And he's a guy who's running around all the formation the entire game, so I can understand and give him some leeway on being a little bit sloppy at the end of games in his pure route running. But the only other thing I can think of, and JT, I'd love to hear your opinion on this too. There was a lot of speculation on the internet a few months ago about how old is this guy, because there are some sources that were telling us he's 25. A lot of people were running with that. I wasn't sold on that. I knew he wasn't 25 because he was part of that high school class of 2020. Still a fifth year, got that extra COVID year out of there, redshirted as a freshman. So he is 22 years old. He's not 25, so he's a little bit older than a guy like Colston Loveland. But to me, in college football, you kind of mentioned it earlier, JT, like a breakout age doesn't really matter to me anymore, especially with the transfer portal and NIL and conference realignments kind of taking that out as a huge thing that I rely on in my studies.
Yeah, for me, age is a little more of a factor for me. I'd say at running back and maybe wide receiver, but tight end, I'm not worried about a guy that's a little bit of an older prospect. Again, to me, that just means hopefully that he's ready to come in and play a little earlier, because he is a little bit older, a little more mature. I agree with you on what you said. Inline blocking needs to improve a little bit. Needs his hand placement. He can get grabby. Which I think in the NFL will cause him to get flags. So he's going to have to be very, very careful about that. I think I was going to say the same thing. He gets a sloppy at the end of games and routes sometimes. And I think it is maybe a conditioning thing because he was doing a lot. They did motion him a ton. They did do a lot of things with him. So I think that's a possibility. The other question for me with him is he's got good speed. We saw it at the combine running. I think it was a 4.68 for a guy his size is pretty fantastic. I don't know if he is going to be a guy that's going to be able to be a super big vertical threat at the next level. And then I don't know if he's going to be able to just run right by guys in the NFL. Now, I think he does do a good job on deeper routes, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to be his strength in the NFL. So that's something I that's a little nitpicky on my part because I don't think he's bad. I just think he doesn't get great separation on vertical routes. So that's going to be kind of interesting to see how that plays out in the NFL. But yeah, like the age thing, I know we've, especially these last couple seasons with all the COVID years and everything, we've gotten a lot of older prospects. And so it's like, oh man, we don't want to take guys 23, 22, 23, 24. I'm not that worried about it with him. I was a big guy that said it last year about Ray Davis. I was like, yeah, I understand he's kind of old and he's literally the same age as Cook there at Buffalo, but Cook played 2 more years in the NFL. But to me, I was like, hey man, this running back, if I'm looking for a guy that's going to be a backup and sub and get 3 or 4 years out of him, then I'm totally good. And we've seen the high end tight ends, which I think Tyler Warren is, or can be in the NFL. We've seen those guys are pretty good into their 30s. So, I mean, if you can get even if he is 22, going to be going on 23 here, if you can get 10 good years out of him, he should be productive into those early 30s, you hope, barring injury and other things. So I'm not as worried about that on the age side.
23 now is going to be the norm, probably even early with this. So with all the money NIL stuff, it's gonna these guys are gonna stay in college for 3 or 4 years and maybe get a year or 2. Yeah, why not? You're gonna make these guys are making $5-7 million a year playing in college. It's more they're gonna make on a rookie contract. So why wouldn't they? Yeah, absolutely. And 22, he's gonna be 23, just turning 23 after the NFL draft. I'm okay with that. I'm 100% okay with that. It's great.
If he was like if he was a guy that was a project, I'd be like, oh man, 23. If he's a project for 2 more years, 3 years, I'm not going to get anything out of him until he's 25, 26. Maybe I'm a little more worried, but again, I think he's a guy that's ready to come in and play right now and be an impact. So to me, I'm not worried about that as much as if a guy, I definitely don't mind taking a project on a guy that I might take a couple years when the guy's 20. I'm a little more worried about it when the guy's a project and I'm taking a project when he's already like 23.
Yeah.
Then it gives me pause a little bit.
I got a couple questions in the chat, but I'm going to wait until after we answer the next couple questions. We're going to move on to the as far as the NFL draft is concerned. Where do you think he's going to go in the NFL draft? And we touched on a couple teams already, but if you right now you're on draft night, you got your fingers crossed. What's the team you want to see Tyler Warren fall to? Where do you want to see him go?
So I actually have a wager every year. Me and my co-host Eric Romoff over there on the IBT podcast, we make a NFL draft wager, an over/under on a player. Last year was JJ McCarthy, and the wager is that at the expo, either Eric owes me a case of Busch Light or I owe him some like shot tequila that costs like $40 a shot or some shit. So right now we are arguing on the line. I think he ultimately probably will be a top 15 pick. That's where I'm thinking. I think he's getting steamed up there at this point. I would like to see what Vegas is going to say, what the number is before I made that bet with Eric. But like, if there was a team that I could just say, this would be my favorite landing spot, it would be the Broncos with Sean Payton, right? Like that's kind of, I think, what everyone's thinking as well. Drafted, developed Taysom Hill, need desperately to find another playmaker out there aside from Cortland Sutton. Like Javonte Williams is gone. He was kind of dog crap anyways. And there just isn't a lot on that team. If you believe in Troy Franklin, I really don't. If you believe in some of these slider guys they got out there running some great seam routes, but aside from that, like, you can kind of miss me on the Marvin Mims hype and all that stuff. So the Broncos, to me, John, would be the one team that I would be thrilled if Tyler Warren landed there from maybe not a gambling perspective, because I'm definitely going to be probably hitting the under on whatever the line is, but certainly from a fantasy football perspective.
JT, I already know your answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
I love to see him at the Colts at 14.
They
really need a help there. His fantasy upside could be limited because of the whole AR situation.
Yes.
So I like him as a Colts fan. I would love to see it for fantasy purposes. I don't know if it's a great landing spot, and that might cause him to fall in fantasy circles. I've seen him kind of all over the board. I've seen him as high as 7 to the Jets. I've also seen him at 9 to the Saints, which I think are two spots that are definitely reasonable spots. Could somebody move up to get him? I could see that happening too. The question is, it's a little bit different than last year with the Brock Bowers situation, where like he was clear cut, way above everyone's number one everything. Where this year, this is a deep class. And so I think your gut now, I have Tyler Warner as my tight end 1, but I definitely think you're going to have teams that like Colson Loveland better for their fit. So I do think there's other teams that are going to say, hey, I like this class in general of tight ends. I don't know if I'm going to reach and get a tight end in the first. Maybe we wait and take a guy in the second or third round instead and fill another need, maybe defensively early. So I do think you're going to see some teams that maybe take that approach, as well as there is some other guys I really like in this. To me, if he gets to 14 to the Colts, I would be really shocked if they didn't take him. If he doesn't go to the Colts at 14, I think there's a couple landing spots right after there. I think the Bengals at 17 is a spot he could land. I think 20 to the Broncos is definitely a spot he can land. And I think 22 to the Chargers. To me, I find it very hard to believe he won't be in that top 20. And I really think it is a top 15 for him unless something crazy changes, but he hasn't done anything in this draft process to really get any knocks to think that teams would be out on him. And we've seen the resurgence of running back tight end in the NFL, which I love, because I felt like for a while there, everybody thought they were just completely, irrelevant. You can throw anyone in there, but we've seen those guys kind of get some more love. So I do think, especially with what we've seen over the last 3 seasons with high-end, top-end tight ends really producing, I think you're going to see teams that are like, hey, we want one of those guys on our team. And I think the fact that Warren can do so much, you can figure out ways to move around to give him the ball. I think his versatility is going to win over a lot of offensive coaches.
I would love to see I'm a huge Mike Gesicki fan, but I would love to see him go to Cincinnati and be just a great part of the Bengals offense. With the shuffle there, with the problems they're having at wide receiver right now, I think he'd be able to be a huge part of that offense for many years to come. I love Mike Gesicki. I want to keep him there because I have him in fantasy leagues all over the place. And I think he's just going to keep,
another Penn State guy. It's another Penn State guy.
Absolutely. So,
tight end you, baby.
Tight end you. So, that's kind of. So, okay, those are the teams that I want to see him go to. All 3 of us want to go to. Now we got a couple questions here in the chat. So what he's saying is, where are you putting Tyler Warren in your dynasty rankings? So this is these are loaded questions, as all of us know. In a non-tight end premium league, where does Tyler Warren go with you? We'll go back and forth here. Seth, in a non-tight end premium league, 12-team, full PPR, non-tight end premium, where do you put Tyler Warren at?
So as far as just rookie drafts, to me, he's a mid to late first. I started this process. I released my first Dynasty rookie rankings before the college football season was even over back in December. I think it was week 16 of the NFL season. And I had Tyler Warren as the 112. That was before Nick Singleton decided to return to school and before I was through with all of my tape study for some of these top guys. And I have slowly slowly inched him up. I now have him right behind the quarterbacks of Shador and Cam Ward, behind Genty and Henderson and Tet McMillan, and that's it. So right now, he's the 106 for me in Dynasty rookie drafts. I know that might not be a lot of people's flavor. If you want to go with someone like a Emeka Egbuka in that range, I'm fine with it. I am lower on, I will, kind of preface that I am very much out on Luther Burden at cost. So kind of out on him. But, if you want to take an O'Marion Hampton instead of him too, I can understand. But somewhere between that 106 and the 108 range makes sense to me. And JT, I don't know where you have him in far as your Dynasty tight end rankings, but it's Brock Bowers and it's Tyler Warren to me. And in that first tier, I think you can argue for Trey McBride or Sammy Ballgame Laporta as well. But that's the clear top tier for me. Any way you want to put him is fine for me.
So I'm going to ask JT next, but I'm going to tell you, Seth, we did a straight just PPR in like a 0.75 or a full point premium. How high does Tyler Warren go up in your top? I mean, let's just say it's 0.75 tight end premium. Where's he at in your rookie rankings?
I mean, I'm taking Cam Ward. I'm taking Genty over him. I'm probably taking Shador just because the quarterback premium is always, and I could probably get there at the 104, the 103 probably. I would take him above Tet for sure. I'm a little bit lower on this wide receiver class.
JT, non-tight end premium, where's he going? And 0.75 tight end premium, which is kind of the norm now for tight end premiums. Where's he going in your draft boards?
Yeah, so for me, if we're going 0 tight end premium, I still think he's a first-round talent as far as fantasy goes, even in a non-tight end premium. If you got any kind of tight end premium from 0.5 to 0.75 to a full point, I think he's got to be in your top 8. And if you're getting closer to 0.75 or 2, full point, so 2-point PPR for a tight end, I think like Seth said, I think he's got to be like closer to your top 4. I really do. I think he's got to be in that 1.4, 1.5, maybe latest range. For me, I'm eyeing him. It's going to be dependent on team. John, you're like me. We both love tight ends. So it's rare that I need a tight end on a fantasy team just because I like tight ends. I usually have a bunch. I do have a couple teams that like just a handful that I've had older guys that now I'm kind of like, okay, I'm going to have to move off Travis Kelce here soon.
Same. I got
I'm going to have to move off Mark Andrews, my Zach Ertz. I'm on the last leg of the Zach Ertz.
Oh man, you've been holding on for a while. Yeah.
So like those teams, I'm probably going to get him if I miss the playoffs and I'm in that top 4, 5, 6 picks. I'm probably taking him because I think, if you got a high premium, I want him. If you're closer to like a 0.5 or even a 0.25, to me, it's going to depend on how much I need running back or wide receiver, but I still think he's probably in the top 8 for me. Anything beyond 8, I think you're getting a steal on. If you get him any later than 1.8, I feel like you're stealing.
Yeah, probably 105-ish for me. So I'm same area as far as that goes. Even in the
Dynasty rankings, if you look at Dynasty rankings, like I was saying, to me, I think Brock Bowers head and shoulders above everyone else. Personally, I love Brock. I thought so coming in last year. I thought he was a special prospect. I think it's Trey McBride is right there with him. I think that after that is McBride. I think Laporta is in there. Depending on where Warren lands, I do think he's a top 5 guy. Like Jamie asked, do you think he's a top 5? I think he is, just because we're seeing that old guard is just getting up there enough in age where you don't want to pay a premium price for those guys anymore. You'll take them on a winner, but you're not gonna invest a lot in the Travis Kelce's, the Mark Andrews, even the Dallas Goederts. Like those guys you still like, they're still good players, but they are definitely closer to 10 in dynasty rankings than they are top 5 anymore, I think. Just because we do have some good young tight ends kind of making their way up. So I do think if Warren transitions to the NFL the way that we think he's going to, for fantasy purposes, I think he's a top 5 dynasty tight end asset.
Absolutely. Robert Thomas says, hey, gang. And then newest member of Fantasy and Friends and Aiden Gardner. Do you guys believe in the hype that Loveland will go higher than Warren in the NFL draft come April? I really love Loveland, but I don't know. Warren is a can't-miss prospect for me personally. So I don't believe that hype. I think Warren is going number 1. Is it possible you guys can see Loveland going ahead of Warren? I mean, anything's possible, but Seth, what do you think that Loveland's going to go in front of Warren, or do you think NFL teams just kind of know altogether that Tyler Warren is the best tight end in his draft class?
I think coming into this process this season, a lot of people had Colston Loveland as their tight end 1. And so I can totally understand that younger prospect, kind of more in that blue chip mold, right? Like he was someone I think from very early on at Ann Arbor, we knew he was a difference maker. This entire season was a bunch of hobble blue up there at Michigan, man. Like, oh my God. I mean, going through whether it was Davis Warren or Alex Orgy or the oh my God, I'm trying to think of the walk-on Jack, whatever his name was, that got hurt. But it just felt like such a mess. And then Colston Loveland gets hurt. So I think with him being injured and just kind of like the lackluster season he had up there, no fault to his own, just, Michigan refusing to pay a quarterback this past offseason, I think really kind of burned him. So I don't think, like, if you gave me odds on it, man, like I would need probably like 7-1 odds to bet Loveland going over. Yeah, Jack Tuttle. There we go. So thank you, Aiden. Thank you. Yeah. So but listen, I do like Colston Loveland. I mean, I have a lot of Colston Loveland respect. I lost a lot of money betting Michigan earlier this year. So nothing but love for Colston Loveland because he was the only damn thing on that offense this year.
Yeah. I was laughing, John, because I saw some people put out some highlight tapes for Loveland, and it was him running great routes, and then the ball getting thrown a mile over his head. They're like, but look at that route. That was a fantastic route. Look how he broke that guy off, like ran that pattern. And it was like, but you had to run that because it was so bad. It was so bad. He still took a huge share. I think it would be closer if Loveland wasn't hurt and having surgery.
Yep.
Because I think the issue for me is teams, no matter what they say, even they're like, hey, man, successful surgery, it's going to be great. He's going to be ready for the season. Teams still want to see a guy work out a little bit. They're still worried about those injuries. Like injuries, yes, our modern medicine is way better and things can get fixed better than they used to. But those things pile up. They add on, especially wear and tear. So I think having a guy healthy and Warren the season that he had, I think it was much, much closer until we found out Loveland was having this surgery. Now, with him really not being able to do anything in this draft process, I think that puts Warren number 1. I still think Loveland's going to go first round. I think teams are going to love him. I'd be shocked if he makes it outside the top 25, to be honest with you. I just think the Chargers
22,
there.
You are a Charger. You are
I think it's going to be hard for him to get past there. I know it seems like just the easy thing to say, well, he went at Michigan and Harbaugh's there, so he's going to take him. But we've seen Harbaugh loves his guys because he knows what he's getting. He knows what types of players and if I was a NFL coach and I had previously coached in college and I had coached at a national championship team, I would rather take the guys I know that I saw in practice every day and the guys that I know their attitude, who they are, and as opposed to taking a chance on someone else. If it's even close, I'm taking the guy I personally already have a relationship with. So I think it'd be hard, especially when you look at the tight end situation for the Chargers, that they would skip him. I know I'd be like, oh, maybe they go running back. It seems hard to me that they would miss him. And if they did, I think there's going to be some teams at the end of the first round that would absolutely be like, in love if he fell to them. I think teams would be like shocked. We would see somebody maybe go off their board to get him, not realizing that he would even be there. So even with the injury, I think he's there. But Warren to me, I think is going to be the odds-on favorite to be the number 1 tight end taken.
Same. Seth, did you go to Penn State?
I did not. I did not have that type of money. I did work at Penn State for a couple years right out of college. I lived right down the street actually from Beaver Stadium, so was very plugged into that organization and that program for a couple of seasons, and loved the area, loved Pennsylvania as a whole. But no, IUP Crimson Hawk journalism alumnus over here, baby. Let's go D2.
Fantastic. I've been to Michigan. Michigan's one of my favorite stadiums. You'll see a game when you walk in there. It goes down about 50 rows. It's like
I've heard that.
It's so cool. But I have not been to a Penn State game yet. I've been to probably about 30 different college football stadiums, but that's one of the ones I definitely want to go to. How many games of Penn State have you gone to in your lifetime?
So I had season tickets for a couple seasons up there in the Sean Clifford era. Unfortunately, RIP, but I would say I've probably been to about 20 plus, probably a good, 24 to 30 some games in my life.
Is it as wild as everybody makes it out to be?
It's amazing, man. They call it Happy Valley for a reason, right? Like, unless you're an Ohio State fan, like F you, but like Michigan fans, I can get down with Michigan fans. everyone who comes like from outside to come hang out in Happy Valley, everyone's happy. Everyone's having a good time. We would walk again. I walked, live right down from the stadium. So my friends would drive down to the stadium. I would bring my wagon out and crack my first beer as the sun's coming up about 7 a.m. And we'd walk down to the stadium and have a grand old time. So it is fantastic. But I think college football in general is just so fantastic. And the vibes there are probably very similar to a lot of these Big Ten schools. So hopefully more people can expose themselves to it as the game continues to grow down there at the collegiate level.
Nothing's as good as Notre Dame Stadium, but I'll try that. I'll try Penn State one time.
Let me know, brother.
As Aiden says, Donovan Edwards at 22. Come on, guys! I'm like, no, me and John were just talking about Donovan Edwards on the.
He should have came out last year
on the selection show.
Maybe 7th or 22nd pick of the 7th round.
Absolutely, he blew it. He should have came out last year. Absolutely. So, all right, Seth, thanks for being on the show today, man. Much appreciated. JT, where can everybody find you? Tell me what's going on tonight with you.
Yep. If you guys are into IDP, me and Jorge have missed a couple of shows because either I was out of town or had something scheduled or he had something going. So we've missed a couple Wednesday nights. So we're going to double dip tonight on the Shoot the Gap IDP show. We're going to talk about our top IDP rookies, and we're going to talk about 5 guys that you want to come out of your draft with. IDP guys you want to have that are outside maybe that top 4 or 5 guys at each position. So if you want to do that, jump in tonight. We'll be on later on this evening here on Fantasy and Frames. And if you're a DLF member, jump on there. I've got all kinds of rookie spotlight profiles from before the combine. And then coming out this next week, I'll have my breakdown of the offense and defensive side of the ball from the rookie combine for me and John, our time there at the combine in Indy this past week. I'm going to be breaking down those as far as what it's going to look like fantasy wise, maybe where those guys are going to get drafted and kind of where you want to take some guys on both sides of the ball.
John McGlynn 75 on X. I just doing these rookie profiles with awesome guests like Seth. Seth, once on the way out, tell everybody where they can find you at, man.
Yeah, inbetweenmedia.com at IBT_media here on YouTube, fantasypros.com, bettingpros.com, and at fantasypros and at bettingpros here on YouTube. Thank you so much, gentlemen. John, always a pleasure. Can't wait to see you out in Canton here this summer, and I'm sure we'll tip a few back, my friend.
Maybe I'll drive with Hoove over there again too, and I'll get to rough him up for the weekend. I tried to get him to do. JT was there at the bar with us. I tried to get him to do an Irish or a Chicago handshake, which is an old style and a Malord shot. And he actually had nothing to do with it, man. He wouldn't even try to do it.
He was like absolutely freaking out. I was like, "What are you trying to do? Kill him?" I'm like, "Don't kill him, man."
Smart
like,
man.
Geez.
Smart man.
All right, very good. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for jumping on, Seth. We'll talk to you guys later.